Very good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's PitchCamp Growth Marketing and Sales Leadership webinar series. This is our 14th webinar on PitchCamp, and lovely to have some familiar faces joining us again. Very grateful, for that patronage that many of you find our sessions extremely useful, valuable, filled with a lot of takeaways. Today we have an amazing speaker. He's one of the first few guys in my network that have been following on the SDR space for over a year and a half. And he's Rahul Wadhwa, and he's the senior SDR manager at Wingify, also known as VWO. He's been with ChargeBee before. He's also been with WhatFix during their entire hockey stick hyper growth phase. So would love to bring his inputs as a key operator, someone who has joined the SDR workforce and then managed his career growing through the ranks, switching companies, seeing different landscapes, working on different market segments, and so on and so forth. So before we jump into that, I would like to take a minute to talk about PitchCamp initiatives, what we have been doing so far, and where we are. So PitchCamp, is an initiative for entrepreneurs and sales teams. We help entrepreneurs on their investor pitch lifecycle journey, and we also coach entrepreneurs on their early stage of B2B sales process. Very recently, we struck a partnership with Draper Startup House as their pitch partner, where we coach the startups that are shortlisted for their fund syndicate pitch night. And we just finished our first cohort of coaching about 6 startups, and we could see tremendous results over their pitch night. So for further details, please visit our website. We have a weekly pitching sessions where you could pitch and get feedback. And if you need deep dive on your particular startup pitch process, we could also work on a one-on-one basis. So without further ado, welcome everyone. I would like to just announce that keep the chat conversation going. You can put in your questions in the questions window here. We need not wait for questions to be responded only towards the end. We want to keep this more engaging. I will be moderating the questions based on the topic that Rahul will be talking about. Any questions that come up on your mind, drop it out there, and I will bring it up at an appropriate point to have it addressed by Rahul. If not, we will take up all the questions towards the end, and then we will follow it up with an open networking session. So in all, we should be able to have the core conversation for the first 40 odd minutes, followed by 15-20 minutes of Q&A. And then 15 minutes of open networking with the speaker as well. So without further ado, Rahul, very welcome to PitchCamp. I'm so glad that you could make time and choose PitchCamp as one of your platforms to come and speak about on building great SDR teams.
So much, Bimlesh, for the introduction. I think I can speak for this myself. So great to have everyone here. I'll try my best to answer all the questions, to the best of my capabilities, and whatever I've done, I've seen, all the mistakes I've done. So quick introduction about me. So before entering into sales, I've changed my career 5 times. I've been a bartender, I've been an executive housekeeper, food and beverage, management training, customer service, collections, you name it. And before I actually got in sales. Now, as they say that, true way to find your passion is trying multiple things before you find something that really speaks to you. And I think it took me like 5 careers before I landed in sales like 4.5 years ago. So it's been a great journey. Hi, everyone. My name is Rahul, and I've been an SDR/BDR for 2 years and a manager for 3, actually. So I've built multiple outbound and inbound sales processes. Actually, I've been fortunate to be in the positions where I actually had the chance to do this for a few of the best startups in the world. In fact, 2 of my previous startups are among the top 60 startups in the world. Top 60 fastest growing startups in the world. So that's why I'm kind of excited to share some learnings, what I've been able to do. Now, my biggest reason for excitement on the PitchCamp is I was discussing with Bimlesh just now is that he hosted Morgan Ingram, who was actually my mentor when I was growing up from the SDR role. So when I was an SDR, there was no concept of SDR manager in India because mostly there used to be like one sales manager who would manage the entire cycle, SDR, BDRs, and sales executive, account executive, everybody. So I got to know about SDR manager as a concept, as a position, from Morgan, and I used to watch his video, and I'm glad to, I'm glad that last week he was here, and today I'm actually sharing this kind of same stage with him. So it feels great. Yeah, I'm ready to take questions. Bimlesh, we can start now. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, we'll get right to the meat. So first, talk to us about what does an SDR do, right?
Sure.
There are different interpretations. Traditional companies call them as inside sales. SaaS companies call them as SDR. So why don't we hear it from you as to you have played that role in a SaaS world, and most of the participants here are also dealing with software sales. So let's kick off this conversation in defining what an SDR is, and we'll take it forward from there.
So SDR is a concept. If I talk, ask any given in UK or the country, they would only understand the concept of SDR or sales development representative as someone who primarily does outbound sales, someone who cold calls, someone who does outbound. Now in India, this term is interchangeably SDR, SDRs. There's a lot of confusion. So let me make that straight first. So SDR in India is someone who handles the inbound lead generated by marketing team, qualifies them, appointments for meetings from account executive, and hence the funnel kind of goes from there. BDR is another term which is kind of used for the outbound SDR. So you can say SDR is inbound, BDR is outbound, just for the sake of conversation. Now, someone, let's say, who does not understand what do they really do. So let me give you a very simple example, and I have thought of this example maybe from my hotel days. So consider a chef, okay, whose job is to prepare the best food which people can enjoy, and in turn, restaurants, of course. Now, the interesting part is that there is no set menu. So chefs get to prepare a new dish every now and then. And since chef has a special skill set, he really want to focus on making those delicious dishes and not spend time really selecting the ingredients, washing, chopping, procuring the chicken, crabs, whatever is being served in the restaurant, or cutting them for that matter. In the restaurant, we call this mise en place. It's like basically you can say it's like a research, or you can say it's like setting up the place, right? Now, people who usually does all this job in the restaurants are called commies. Now, consider chef as like an account executive, someone who's a closer in a company, and these commies are like like the SDRs. So what they do is they hunt the chicken, they buy vegetables, clean them, make sure it's ready to be cooked by the chef. I think this is the best example I can tell you. When it comes to, let's say, explaining a layman what an SDR term might mean. Now, every company, whether they're SaaS or non-SaaS, initially builds their strategy on organic or inbound leads. And when they believe inbound leads, let's say, are not enough to keep the pipeline full, or their business goals are not being met, that's when they go towards outbound. Now, the strategy they want to adopt is, hey, we want to reach out to people instead of people reaching out to us. So the role of an SDR is to hunt for basically new untouched opportunities, or BDR, that help the company expand the markets and find more leads. You can think of them as the front line of the companies who are, I'm sorry, I'm actually speaking about the SDR role. I'm not sure if you guys have seen on Discovery how it's made. So if you see, how they talk about the assembly line. There's a quality inspector. That was actually one of the quality inspectors, so I know how that job is done. Where his job was to make sure all the parts which are coming through and would be operated in the bank. It used to be the hero on that. So which will be made in the company, he wanted to make sure that every part is actually to the best of the quality as per the standards set up by the company, as per the quality standards. So you can actually say that he was doing a sort of an SDR job as we do here. When we're dealing with those inbound leads, the role of an SDR works for me. So most of the SaaS companies, or let's say most of the non-SaaS companies, they all start with the inbound sort of a strategy where people are interested in their product because they have developed a product which people are already interested in. Now, for a SaaS company, it could be something like, let's imagine that I build an invoicing software, okay? And my potential customers are already searching for something like, let's say, QuickBooks, right? And when I'm looking for QuickBooks, when I go to Google, I usually type in what are the best softwares for accounting, and QuickBooks comes in. Let's imagine you are the founder, you are the company behind the QuickBooks books. So people are already searching for your product, right? So there are already a ton of prospect, a plethora of prospect who are already interested in your product or services. Now, of course, what you want to do is make sure your account executives or closers who are already less in number, they speak to people who are definitely more interested than other people who are just exploring right now. So that is why you put SDR as a function, so that like I was explaining the example of my dad. My dad used to work in a company called Hire Honda, and he was a quality inspector like a few years ago, and his job was to make sure all the parts which are being created by robots or by people manually welded properly. He wanted to make sure, as per the standards set by the company, all those parts are up to the standards, so that once they're fitted into the bike, there are no complaints later. At the same time, there's a quality issue, there's a branding issue. We want to make sure if every product, which is built by the company, that is up to the standard. So consider my dad like an old example of an SDR, where he was doing something similar what SDRs do now. So they want to make sure they're working the line, if I were to give you a simple example. So every product, every lead which is coming in, they're going to talk to them and see, hey, where are they in terms of the sales cycle? Are they interested? Do they really have a challenge which they're trying to solve? And if that is the case, would it make sense? And so what happens once all these companies, they have a healthy funnel of leads coming in, they would want to, let's say, speak to a portion of it, which is where the sales methodologies come into picture. The oldest sales methodologies you might have heard, which was probably invented in 1998, SPIN, BANT. BANT, if I were to talk about, it stands for Budget, Authority, Need, and Timeline. So some companies, I would say few companies now, would still rely on something like BANT. This works because it has been working for some time. However, more sophisticated companies have evolved, and they have either built their own sales methodologies because they think something like, I'll tell you why BANT probably does not work, for example, some of the companies, so that you understand what the different methodologies in the first place. So BANT it stands for budget, authority, need, and time. So let's say imagine that my boss is the one who is going to be the one who's going to start the deal, who's going to start the deal. However, the decision has to come from me. The decision to buy the product has to come from me. Now, if I go to a company and the company says, you know what, you're not a fit for us because you will not be the ultimate person who will give us the money. It'll be your CEO, so we're going to speak to your CEO. Now, if you think about it, my CEO cannot, if I'm evaluating, the CEO cannot be the one who would be involved in this dealing with you. So in this case, if you understand, I'm a sort of an influencer who will push this deal as much as possible. So if you understand now, BANT can probably not work for a situation like today. So that is the reason there are different methodologies called MEDIC, MEDPIC. There are tons of them. It totally depends on the sort of business you are. If you're an early stage, you probably don't care about the qualification. You probably want to speak to everybody, any chance you get.
So if I'm an early stage startup, so this is a question that comes up, very often, right? I'm an early stage startup in the B2B enterprise space. I sell to mid-market and enterprise spaces. By default, we set up an inbound channel with our website, and trying to make our product being visible on several platforms as well. So if I were to start from scratch, fresh outbound teams, what would be your couple of pointers or 5 things that you would recommend? This is where you look for people. These are the type of skills you should look for. What should be my ratio between SDR and AE that I should hire up on the team? So talk to us a little bit about building an SDR team for outbound.
Okay, sure. So there are a couple of factors which you will have to factor in before you start about building a team, and it all starts from your product. your product would be completely revolutionary, where there might be a lot of education required. So your process of building the outbound team would be slightly different from when you already have a product which will be competing with other products in the market with, of course, one or two value proposition. Now, when you do that, you have to think about how long will you take to, let's say, get your first customer. Because let's say in a case when you are building a product which no one has ever thought of, you would, of course, want to keep in mind that there will be a lot of education which will be required. It could be through your marketing team writing blogs, marketing team writing, let's say, organizing webinars, something like this, to educate people, to make them aware of new technology, which a product is, of course, the challenges which you're trying to solve. Versus if you are trying to solve the problem which has already been solved, but in your own unique way, then of course you can probably start as early as possible, right? Because now the market has been defined for you. The people who actually buy these sort of products. You don't have to really bog down your brain, set up those complicated processes. So the best example I can give you, which I think everybody will be able to relate, is when Flipkart, introduced in India. Imagine the kind of work they had to do to educate people. Hey, you know what? You don't have to buy books from the stores anymore. You can actually buy your books on Flipkart. Then the concept of the whole e-commerce started to get the traction. When Amazon came, they did not have to do anything. Everything was set up for them. They actually knew all the best practices, all the failures which Flipkart had already gone through. So they just had to build on top of that. So imagine when you are, I'm sure you will be either, if you are a company, so you're a startup or founder, you would actually realize you always fall into either of these categories. You could be either Flipkart or you could be Amazon, where somebody has already paved the way, and you are gonna come and you're gonna probably rule them by saying, you know what, I have a very unique proposition. And if you see, and if you think about this today, that's how most of the startups work. Right? I think I was listening to this talk the other day. Somebody said, you know what, most of the startups, I think there's a percentage given to it, I don't know exactly, but it was that most of the startups today would be just a unique value proposition of something which already exists, right? So I think that's how your whole strategy would be kind of worked on. Once you've identified those, what you can do is that, of course, you will have to identify your most attractive market. So since you asked if I were to tell you 5 things or 6 things what you would have to do to build these, and we will talk about SDR to AE ratio in a bit. So one, identify your most attractive market via market segmentation. So you will have to do that market segmentation, and I'm considering you would of course have to spend a long time research whether you are established product actually to create a niche for yourself. Then you would want to establish a clear value-based proposition that will guide you through the segmentation as to what makes you win. Let's say if I am creating a product which, let's say, compete with what do you call? Let's say I launch a phone today. Okay, I know the phone market is already so competitive, so I would have to understand the kind of market I want to bank upon. So I can either be competing with something like Samsung or Apple in the higher segment, or I can be competing with Oppo or other Chinese brands. So that's up to me, and accordingly, you understand the pitch will be totally different. So that is why, which brings me to the next point. You will have to generate customer data and insights, and you would have to analyze those data and group them into ideal customer profile, as we call it. So right now, in a sort of companies I've worked with, we would be selling primarily to the ideal customer profiles, because we have identified that within marketing, there are, let's say, 4 or 5 marketing sort of profiles or customer profiles that one might see. One person could be the head of marketing. One could be someone who is handling the UX part, right? So director of UX engineer, or somebody could be as low as, let's say, marketing specialist. Again, I'm not trying to give them a hierarchy, but I'm trying to tell you within one department there could be multiple levels, right? Even though they might appear as, because the way you understand this better is once you understand. So there's a concept called JDBD, which is jobs to be done. There's a web, I'm sure you would actually be able to Google and find, and this is the best way to really learn more about the prospects and the people you're going to sell to. And I heard one of the podcasts recently where what they did is there was a podcast where they interviewed somebody who bought a mattress, right? And they ask every single question to that person as to what really led him to buy that mattress. Did he go to the store to really buy that mattress? What day was it? What color he was wearing? Did he go alone? Did he go family? What was the thought process? What was the budget? Did he go over the budget? So imagine the kind of psyche what they're trying to find out, and that is when I say, you know, ideal customer profile. That's what it goes. That's the kind of level of thought which goes into driving those ideal customer profiles. So from bird's eye view, it might look like, hey, you know what, this person is in sales, this person is marketing, but as you understand, I don't do a job of a closer, right? I manage a team, so it might appear that I'm a part of sales, which I am, but my role is totally different from my director of sales or my director of operations, right? So that's what you want to identify. You want to find those minute differences between all the profiles, and you want to segment them. Then you want to evaluate the attractiveness of each segment. At the same time, you will want to find the leads who would fit into that bucket. So I might be selling to marketeers. I might be selling to marketeers, but my product only appeals to, let's say, marketeers uh, who work in the company between 200 to 500 employees who sell to restaurants. I'm just giving a hypothetical example.
Sure.
So I would want narrow it down as much as possible before I start my outbound process. I would have to filter these points in, because until I don't do that, I'm gonna be a carpet. I'm gonna be like a carpet bomber, as my boss used to say. So I'm gonna shoot everywhere, hoping that somebody will actually buy my product. Or you can be like a sniper. In order for you to be sniper, you would have to really do this bifurcation where you understand the segment you want to sell to, the people you're going to sell to, and go from there. Your next question was, how do we decide how many BDRs to one AE or how many SDRs to one AE? I think there's no concrete answer to this. Okay, I'll tell you the reason why. You would have to understand. So there's a whole mathematics you can do. If somebody is interested, let me know. I'll probably send you guys a Excel sheet where you can enter numbers in terms of what's the capacity of your account executives right now. That way you can easily guess how many SDRs would you require. But at the same time, it kind of depends on the stage and the growth of the company you are at, right? If you are, let's say, dealing with 10 leads a day, you don't need probably 2 SDRs. Even one is more than enough. If you're dealing with 100 leads, like we used to deal, let's say at my previous company, Chorsby, we used to get, like, I don't know, upwards of 5,000 leads a month, and even 10 SDRs would feel less at times. So based on that, you would decide SDR, and based on SDRs, you would also decide what is the qualification metric, how many out of the 100 leads your SDRs speak to, what's your contact rate, how many people are you able to contact, and then how many people are you able to push through for the meeting, how many people really make the meeting, because some people might not show up. Now, is your account executive have enough on his plate to handle more? If not, then you need more account executives. So I think no one really needs to rack their brains in terms of how to really find out. I'll send an Excel sheet. I think you can probably find it on Google, but if you cannot, just let me know. I'll be happy to send that sheet where you enter your numbers and you will know how many people you need.
So when you're trying to build out your first set of SDRs, so talk to us a little bit of what type of skills and attitudes and aptitudes would you look for when you're trying to hire your first few SDRs? And would you recommend a mix of senior experienced folks and and a group of fresh hires, or would you want to hire only a group of fresh hires?
I think that also depends on what you're trying to do or where you are. So let me make this simple before I get into the diplomatic answer. No, I'm not trying to get into one. If I'm building this, so for example, at my current organization, there are already like 10 SDRs, 10 BDRs who work with me. If I were to hire anybody now, it's totally up to me, because the team has been performing for some time, so I know what works, what doesn't work. At the same time, it also depends on what's your bandwidth like, what's your commitment towards training them. My experience has been fantastic with both of them. Like I said, I think it totally depends on where I was in terms of building the team. So when I was building my first team, of course, I had nobody, so I had to hire experienced people. because we wanted to make sure this model is going to work for us to scale and prove to the company, present a business case, and hire more people. So if you have nobody right now, and you're looking for the first hire, definitely look for someone experienced. Okay. Once you have been able to scale to an extent, it's going to actually work both ways. It's going to be a win-win situation, because let's say 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, when you see this rep is performing, you can actually bring somebody fresher. This person would also have someone to train at the same time, someone to talk to. That I have some additional responsibilities. That way, you can actually also show him some kind of career path. He can build up some leadership qualities. So it's a win-win for both of you. But I wouldn't recommend starting with freshers right away unless you find somebody who's absolutely excellent, and who you believe would require minimal supervision. But you would also have to factor in this person, since it does not carry any experience, would also take his time. There would be a lot of learning curve for him to understand the whole ecosystem. I think you would have to look at the pros and cons depending on because there might be times you might think, hey, because right now, as you understand, some of the market is getting saturated. A lot of people who have been into business development because they want to move up to the ladder. They want to, they're just frustrated because they were never given a chance. They were never given the chance in the company. They were never trained. They were never exposed to other departments, so they don't know. Now, even if you hire them, you have to understand they will be very inquisitive. They will be in a rush to go to the next level. So even if they don't say explicitly, the question at the back of the mind is, hey, when would I get promoted? What's the career path for me? So I think ideal fit, if you're looking for somebody with less than 2 years of experience, and as freshers goes, I would suggest hire somebody with some sort of business acumen. That's what I've done in the past. But at the same time, there are more qualities. There are other qualities like Albus Dumbledore might have said in Harry Potter. There are other qualities which makes a good SDR, and those are not experience. Those are not the business acumen. That's something. What did you do in your last role, and how does your thinking process looks like? So I'll give you 2 examples of my previous SDRs whom I hired. None of them actually had the business acumen. None of them actually were freshers. One of them actually took a 2-year break to travel. Okay, and one of them did study from, of course, US, but at the same time he was handling something which is not even remotely close to what we were doing in the previous company. And this I'm talking about Siddharth, actually, who's the co-author of my book, which we published like 2 months ago. Okay. So I think the only reason, I'm not saying the only reason, the reason I hired him is since he probably lived in a different country, he was able to understand different cultures. He was able to really, get into that conversation without bragging. At the same time, just act as human, right? So yeah, I think that's pretty much it when it comes to hiring. But if you were to ask me, what I do look for when I hire, I look for top-notch communication. That's like a deal breaker for me. If you cannot, and this is something which I tell everyone on the face, not trying to be arrogant here, but I usually tell people, that I'm looking for someone on a scale of 1 to 10. If I were to rate yourself, if you're 8 and above, yes, we will talk. Otherwise, we will not. Okay, that's my criteria, because that's the kind of standard I've been able to set. At the same time, the companies I usually work for, we're selling globally, and when you are on a role, especially as a BDR, where striking a conversation with the stranger is absolutely of utmost importance, you cannot have somebody who would struggle to actually strike a conversation. So that's definitely other few things which I look for is, this is one of the questions which is now probably public. Few of my BDRs, ex-BDRs kind of have made this public. But I ask everybody who actually comes to an interview, hey, you know what, explain the product, either your product or my product. How would you explain this to a 6-year-old? Now, if you're able to dumb it down to a level of a 6-year-old, now I know that you've definitely understood the product. You've done some research, because as you understand, simplifying things takes the most time. If you have a fair idea of what a product does, probably you have to have an exact idea But this is where we go into detail in terms of how much research you have done. So if you know my product inside out, I think you would be able to explain this to a kid.
So preparation is pretty important as well.
So if you are not prepared for the most important thing in the world, which is going to give you the bread and butter, why do I believe that you would be actually you would actually bother to research about the prospect? So one of the theory I have is, how you do one thing is how you do another. If you're going to slack here when you're researching about the company or when you're preparing for the interview, which is like the biggest thing for you, you're probably not. You're probably going to do the same behavior. The same behavior.
We have one question that's come in from Sham. It says, how are you keeping your SDR team motivated at these times?
So there are a couple of things you can do. Again, you have to understand, Sham, that it's the first time. Okay, so your question is how you're keeping motivated. Your question is not that I'm keeping motivated, keeping them motivated in remote. When I'm working remotely. So working remotely is a different challenge. When I speak about how am I keeping them motivated, so you have to understand that most of the SDRs I work with are millennials. I am myself, I'm a millennial. Right? I'm not going to tell my age, but yeah. We all are dealing with millennials at the same time. I even have few people in my team who are Generation Z, who were probably born after 1994. So they're like 25, 26 right now. I was not born in the same age, right? I'm probably a little elder than, older than what they are. But one thing I need to understand is I need to really think like them. I really need to behave like them. If I were to talk about millennials today, I'm sure that there's a lot of chat around the net around this. But we all love to brag, right? We all love to, as we call, humble brag. All the places we have visited, all the achievements we have done in the life, and that's what the underlying thought is. That's what the underlying motivation is. So if you're asking me how do I keep them motivated, I do not leave a single chance to motivate them in the whole public. So the same logic, right? Whenever there's a chance, you would want to praise them in front of the whole public. At the same time, give the instances. Just not praise. Hey, you did a great job. You should be able to tell other people what did they do. What did you find as good? What did you find as great? What do you want people to take inspiration from? And as much as I would love to do this automated, there are tools, by the way, to keep do this automated. But I tend to do this manually. So every time a rep sets up a meeting, we can actually do private, we can actually do public. We have a SPIF going on, let's say for this month. SPIF stands for Sales Performance Incentive Fund, so which is like an extra incentive, extra variable if you are able to hit these short-term numbers. At the same time, a daily catch-up every day with the team and individually, where I'm going to make sure that there are no surprises 6 months or 3 months later when they say, hey, you know what, I'm not feeling motivated. So you want to make sure they're motivated at all times, and you would want to do this genuinely. This is something which you cannot fake because, like I said, you have to believe it yourself first that you really want to motivate somebody, and you would have to figure out different ways to do this. So every Friday, for example, I want to make sure we have a 30-minute meeting with groups. We do this at the organizational level. We do this on a team level. So there are multiple ways. Sham, if you want to know more stuff, I think we can start in private.
So the next topic that I want to talk about is about setting targets and your incentive structures, and then we'll open the floor for more questions. So I'm an early stage startup, and I've just hired my team. So far I've acquired my first 5 customers, all by myself as an entrepreneur. And I kind of have a fair understanding of my conversion metric and my sales lifecycle with these 5 customers that I've closed out right now. Now I'm onboarding, my SDRs, and I'm hoping to scale up my customer acquisition. So given this scenario, and as the growth of the company goes forward, what would be your thoughts on how do you set your targets for the SDR teams and the incentive structures?
I'm guessing when you say SDR, okay, I'm going to take both examples so that there's no confusion to everybody. As we discussed earlier, I'm going to cover SDR stands for inbound, BDR stands for outbound. So I'm going to talk about both of them since I've been fortunate to work in all the stages of the company. First thing you want to make sure is when you're offering the compensation, there's a good split between the fixed and the variable. Okay, I'm gonna talk about the psyche for a minute as to why that's important. So, and this is something kind of go wrong. Is they offer a higher fixed salary to the salesperson and lower variable. So there is no incentive, there is no motivation for the salesperson to really hit those numbers. While these numbers might be important to you, but again, keep the underlying fact in mind. You're dealing with millennials. They probably care about, well, how can they get more? How can they get more? They probably might not be able to buy your vision immediately. However, given the time, sure, they will actually buy that. But understand that. So have a good fixed and variable split. I would say the standard fixed, which runs in India, is about 70-30, 70% fixed, 30% variable. Now, once you have a 30% variable set up, now you can go about setting up the incentive structure. So if you talk about early stage companies, if you're, let's say, if you're talking about SDR, I would say give them a target on the conversion. Do not give them a fixed target that you have to get these many opportunities or these many meetings, because right now you understand you don't have anything defined. You don't even know how revenue looks like. So that's like a very small number if you were to talk about data. So that, I'll tell you why this is going to have many purposes. One, when you're talking about conversion, this rep is going to make sure no lead is going to get untouched. He's going to work on every single lead diligently, because now his job is that if you get leads, he has to get 20 meetings. And he will move mountains to make sure you get those 20 meetings. As and when you grow, you can, as and when you, let's say, reach the next stage, you can probably either increase the conversion percentage or maybe add some sort of qualification matrix. Because let's say in those 20 meetings, you realize that, hey, five of these meetings had this particular this particular instance where the prospect did not have a budget. So now if more people do not have the budget, they're not going to buy. So you can probably introduce budget as the next qualification criteria, or based on whatever model works for you. If I were to talk about BDR, I think initially you would want to incentivize them on any sort of meetings booked, as long as they're able to bring people, as long as they're able to generate interest for your product. I think that should work for you. As and when you grow, again, understand, as and when you understand, and that's exactly what we have been doing. For example, at my company, earlier when we started, we were able to bring up anybody and everybody who's interested in our product. At the same time, my company is at a different stage. Then as and when we realize, hey, you know what, now we're getting enough meetings, now it's the time to put some qualification criteria in place. Because then we introduce something like, let's say, sort of an opportunity. So out of the X number of meetings you get, these many meetings have to convert into deals. These many deals have to proceed further. Of course, there will be a considerably low number in terms of meetings versus opportunities, but you get the idea. Then at third, where everything was like very streamlined, we were getting inbound process was set up for a very long time. We had for BDR, we will have for SDRs, we would actually have a concept of, let's say, set number of meetings, which will be something like, hey, you're getting 300 leads, your target is 40. Okay, whether they and that is where, again, you can probably play whether you want to introduce another measure. For example, we have something like the deal value created from the meetings which you had set up, and you can probably assign like a small portion to it, like 23%. More weightage to the number of meetings. Then you can also do something like average response. If you're able to measure that CRM, that way you can ensure that the lead which comes in is given most importance.
Thank you so much, Rahul. That was very insightful.
Hey, first of all, thanks, Rahul, for your wonderful insight. Like many of these things, we can repeat each other. Like since we just started from our end, what are the points you're telling? Okay, I can pinpoint. Okay, fine. Okay, we need to tick mark this thing, and all. Right. So one question here. Okay, just to give a little bit intro, I'm the co-founder and CEO of CustomFit.ai. It's a hyper personalization platform for B2B websites. We compete with the companies like Mutiny and Proof. Okay, so the question here is like I've been suggested that initial when you're hiring SDRs, like better hire two persons, okay, together, so that there is a sense of competition with each other. Like how, like what's your suggestion with respect to that? Because we are in the verge of getting like the sales hires at this stage.
I don't see a reason why you should. I have no reservations against hiring two or three. I think that's a great idea. Whatever has been suggested to you, to hire these two people at the same time, they can actually learn from each other. Because if you hire one, the downside to that is that person would always be looking up to you or somebody else who is in the company who's senior, right? So when you have two people, these people can train each other, do training, so learn from each other at the same time. You said each other and competition. So that kind of works. Uh, did that answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. That reinforces what actually we are thinking. And one more question I have, like with respect to the, I mean, basically the sales consultants. Okay, what's your suggestion? Case, okay, say that okay, there are these different agencies. Okay, when we are trying to talk with the different regions like the Middle East, Europe, even the regions like Singapore and all, where actually we've been approached by a couple of the sales consultant agencies, which actually they can take care of the initial momentum for you to, because you don't know the market that well over there, since actually they know it. Like what's your suggestion, whether actually for initial stage startup they need to go and partner with those kind of the the sales agencies, or just refrain at this stage and concentrate when you have the enough from the region which you know well?
Sure. So when you say sales consultancy, you mean these people will be able to set up initial meetings with the clients. Is that right?
Correct.
I think you should definitely go for it, but I'll tell you what to do in order to make sure you are definitely not at the loss. So go for a model where they only get paid when you get paid. Because you have nothing to lose. At the same time, you know that things are going to, because if that doesn't, you have nothing to lose at that.
Sure. But not many are these kind of the outcome driven agencies are there. Okay, even like basically they're like basically consider okay, the agency which we are dealing currently, or which we are having initial talks, that starts with as little as say $3,000 per month to $5,000 per month for the initial traction. Do you think okay that's suggested numbers to go and engage with them, and then see how, like, at least you can go and test the waters of that side?
I wouldn't say, I definitely wouldn't say that, because
Uh, Sorry, Rahul, your voice is a bit. I mean, basically, it's
is it
breaking.
better now? Okay.
Kind of.
So I would say definitely go for it. However, do some research in terms of, because there are tons of companies like this who might claim the expertise, but you would have to understand as to who really is has been in the market for some time, customers they have. Like, you would want to do the same diligence as you would do when, let's say, you were, let's say, buying the product. You would want to speak to their customers as to how they really benefit. See how, was their structure of sale was similar to yours. So I'm not saying that this thought hasn't crossed my mind. I've actually spoken to some similar companies in the past. It's just that if I want to be partnered with them, again, like you said, we do not offer something similar. We get paid when they get paid, sort of a scenario. But in this case, I would say you would have to test waters, because your company might not be in the same domain as the company. So I think that's the best bet. At the same time, how it would also help you, because once, let's say, if this model works, you would not have to think about how to build your own model from scratch, because now you know understand their points, which they use to bring these customers to the meeting. So you can probably have their sales book.
Correct. Makes sense. Thanks, man.
Ashwin, one suggestion point there,
Please.
if I may add, Rahul.
Yeah, please.
So there are two ways to look at this. One, give a higher preference to identifying partners who can resell on your behalf there. Right?
Okay.
That's a more invested approach on behalf of a reseller to sell your product. And that purely works in the way that Rahul suggests, that resellers work on an outcome-based model. And when you're working with agencies, my suggestion is work with an agency after you have an experience of working with SDRs on your own. Else, you will have some time that you will take to understand how that agency works, what type of leads they give. You will end up spending a lot more time in helping them qualify your leads, educating them on your qualification matrix, for you to
Makes sense.
determine whether they are actually worthwhile the time and the money or not.
Yes, yes, definitely makes sense.
So it's like an agency toolkit, right? You should have
Correct.
your agency toolkit ready
Exactly,
before
exactly. The
you engage
blue
an
book
agent.
is ready. Correct, correct.
Correct.
Thanks, Bimlesh. Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have the next question from Tina. Who is the best person to do price negotiation in a company with only the founder and one salesperson on the team?
Let me get this question right. So who's the best person to do the price negotiation in a company with only the founder and let's say one person? Okay. So are you saying that you're selling to the company with one founder and one more person?
The situation is she's a founder and she has one salesperson. So who is the best person to negotiate?
Oh, okay. I think it depends on the skill set and depends on who you're selling to. For example, if you're talking about, let's say, it depends on your skill set as well, Tina. So if you have built the expertise in, let's say, sales negotiation, of course you should be the one doing it. But if you have a salesperson who has more experience and who has done this more times than you have done, of course, in that case, I would put that salesperson ahead.
Wonderful. Next question is from Pallavi. What's the secret for ensuring exponential sales growth or increase in numbers?
I think I've answered that, but let me explain. Let me to elaborate. So it all boils down to your strong processes, right? So you would realize that when you don't have processes in companies, and I'm not sure if you guys have worked with companies as such, they would not be able to find out where things break. You would not be able to find out, and that is why you would understand most of these bigger companies, enterprise companies, they always have these SOPs, standard operating procedures. So if something breaks, they are immediately able to pinpoint to what the problem is, able to fix that and make sure the whole engine, the whole process is working. I'm gonna go back to my example, and this is what I every time told as to how things would work. So they would have like a whole engine, which would be telling me here is the metal comes in, compressed. This is built into different parts. All these parts are being assembled. Now, when you have an assembly line, he's able to identify things are working in case, let's say, there's a pulley, there's a chain going on. You're able to immediately identify, hey, you know what? I'm not getting more parts coming in. That means something is broken. So you go back to the left part and so on, and that's how you identify. In terms of sales, um, it's very good practice to actually build a strong sales playbook, and with that I mean identify what has really worked for you. So how do you do that? So let's say if I'm starting a process today, I would be able to identify what my process looks like today. And accordingly, once I'm able to see the numbers, I want to see how does my process look now. So now I'm able to also go backtrack and see what did I improve in order to reach here. So in case, let's say I am able to reach out to 100 prospects, I'm able to set up 10 meetings. If someday I am not able to uh, set up those 10 meetings, I would go back to the step one, identify that the filters we use in order to identify those 100 prospects on the day one, are those filters same? Because that will probably give me the lead quality. Similarly, going forward, I would be able to identify, did my rep work the same way? Like in the sense, if there was a sequence which we followed, let's say 10 calls, 20 emails, did we follow the similar approach? Was our email writing similar? Did we call at different hours? So all that stuff goes into the sales playbook. Playbook, of course, has much more than what I'm trying to describe. But a strong process in the sales playbook is definitely the answer to your sales growth and increase in numbers, because there will be a time when you are, let's say, when you are already running at a different number, now you want to increase that number. So let's say if you don't have the process, well written, and you try to make drastic changes, which might break down the process, and you might go below what you already were, you would not understand how to go back to where you were earlier. Right? So you would want to have a process map to guide you at all times, especially right now.
The next question is from Kinjal Sharma. Can you give a few tips and insights for freshers who are starting their career in SDR? Great question. This was one of my leading questions, as we come to the wrap-up point.
Sure. Thank you, Ginjal. I think we follow each other on LinkedIn. I see you like all my posts. So thank you. Okay, if you're starting your career in SDR, I think the time cannot be better to start your career in SDR. I would definitely encourage anybody and everybody who would want to start their career here, because I've seen success. I know a lot of people who have seen success. So if you want to start your career, so first of all, you would want to find a training plan. You cannot rely on a lot of noise which is out there, which could be even from people like me. I could be giving advices which might or might not fit where you are, because you might be in a different stage. So one, you might want to find out a formal training plan which can really propel or excel and help you excel in your career. Because let's say if you have studied enough, and if you have been able to, if you're able to portray the knowledge, and if you are able to showcase during your interview, let's say if you're being interviewed, that you know everything what an experienced person knows, and you would be able to apply, you're just looking for a chance to apply that knowledge, I think you would already be ahead of all the other people. So one, you can definitely take all the noise, take all the knowledge advices from LinkedIn or other sources, but you have to understand, since you are probably not in the game, you would probably not know how to apply or assemble all that knowledge together. So I would suggest, if you're a fresher, look for a formal training course. If you have to spend money, if it requires like you to spend some money, I would say do it, because it will be definitely an investment for your career.
How about a point on dealing with umpteen rejections as an SDR when you're early in your career?
The interview rejection?
How do you deal with rejections? Customer rejections?
See, it's like, I know it might sound like easier said than done, but since we've been doing this and I've been training my teams for dealing with this, is you want to set up first of all smaller goals. First of all, acknowledge that rejection is a part of sales throughout. If you are scared of rejection, which I know a lot of people are, it is the right time for you to step back and do not enter sales, because this is going to be there throughout your career, throughout your life, as long as you're in sales. And I think we probably take rejection, if I say negatively. We always think, hey, rejection is something I don't want to face, because that's a thing nobody wants to face, right? If you ask anybody, does anybody want to face rejection? No. Do I need all the money in the world without working hard? Yes. So you don't want things the easy way, but that's not how life works, right? We get through life, life's lot of rejection, but we are scared from a rejection we get from the customer. But like I said, one, acknowledge that it's going to be part of the life. Second, you cannot avoid rejection. You can avoid instances when you get the rejection. So customers might reject you for multiple reasons if you're not prepared, if you do not know how to handle those objections, or if you're leading your conversation to a stage where the customer will object. So let me give you an example. If you right now, if there's an SDR who actually takes the old approach of calling somebody and says, "Hey, I'm calling from so and so company. Is it a good time to talk?" Now, if you understand, this is a very old way of working, where when you ask somebody, is it a good time to talk, or if you ask me how you're doing, we all know this is a cold call. We all know where this is leading. We all know what's going to come after I tell you how I'm doing, because you don't care how am I doing, right? Because your conversation is not leading up anywhere. I know you're going to get back to your business eventually, and then you start pitching your business. The moment you do that, you understand that the way it feels is when I'm in the moon with the ball, and the mall guy says, "Do you want to try this perfume? You want to try this food?" Because I know he's trying to pitch me into buying something. Do that. So you would have to understand the basic your human nature. You would have to understand the very basics of how you can avoid this rejection. Not, like I said, not avoid, but you can decrease your chances by preparing yourself better.
Well, wonderful, Rahul. I think we are almost at the time now. It's been a wonderful interaction with you, Rahul. Would love to thank everyone who have stayed online, joined this webinar, and stuck on with us right till the end. Really appreciate your time. Once again, thank you, Rahul, so much. Great conversation, great insight.
Yeah, it was a pleasure speaking to you and love you audience. Thank you so much for the great questions.